So let's take some moment to recite Surah Fatiha and 3 times Surah Ikhlas for all our marhumins, but especially those marhumins who have really helped us out on the Hajj seminars and taking Hujjaj to the holy places. And this is where, for example, Inayat Bhai has learned from them. So these are the folks who have done Hajj over 20, 25, 30 years. So these are Marhum Ali Raza Nanji, Marhum Habib Mahmud Habib, Hussein Yusuf Ali, Muhammad Panju Jaisa, Roshan Devji, Liaquat Asaria, Zera Habib, Muhammad Raza Lakha, Bwana Ali, Hussein Ramtullah, Habib Walji, Shams Kanani, Abbas Alidina, Mohsin Bhai Kamalia, and Syed Asad Jafri, and I'm sure there are quite a few more who probably I'm missing. So let's recite together 1 time Surah Al-Hamd and 3 times Surah Ikhlas. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد صدق الله العلي العظيم. So Mu'minin, welcome to our in-person seminar here at Masum Islamic Center. It has been our culture to hold the seminars in person in the past, pre-COVID, and then suddenly we had to move online. So thank you, Inayat Bhai, for insisting to have at least an in-person seminar so we can meet the brothers and sisters here for the Hujjaj who are going to go, inshallah, for Hajj this year. So today's topic, as we all know, is looking at the fiqh aspects of the Hajj Masails. Akil covered the Umrah Masails last week. Inshallah, all of us have done the pre-read, so it will make us easier to understand, inshallah. Now, because we are broadcasting this seminar live via YouTube, Rehan will post my email address, hmegji@rogers.com. So if you have any questions, those who are on, listening online, just send me an email, and at the end of the session, we will pick up all the questions. Inshallah, let's try to focus the questions on the topic today, and then inshallah, next week we will be resuming back online, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, and next week's topic is Medina. So we'll talk about the significance of Medina, the outside ziyaras of Medina, etc. Inshallah. Okay. So with one loud salawat, please welcome Akil for the seminar. Akil, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا. آمنت بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Recite one salawat for me, please. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, all praise belongs to Him and to Him alone. Again, thank you to Inayat Bhai and Habib Bhai for organizing an in-person seminar. It's been a few years since we had something like this in person. What we want to talk about today, and I know time is limited, we want to talk about the second half of the Hajj journey. Last week, for those of you who attended the online session, we talked about Umrah Tamattu. Umrah Tamattu, and this is the slide that we ended at, has 5 rituals. And those are the wearing of ihram, the performing of tawaf, the 2 rakat salat that follows tawaf, sa'i, which is going back and forth between the mounts of Safa and Marwa, and then finally taqsir. And at that point, the first part of Hajj is complete, the Umrah is complete. Very similar to when you go and perform Umrah Mufrada. These rituals are identical, except in Umrah Mufrada there are 2 additional rituals, which is the Tawaf al-Nisa and the 2 rakat salat. So the Umrah is very similar when you go for regular Umrah. Then we move on to Hajj itself. So one of the questions that was asked at the end of yesterday or last week's session was the meaning of the word tamattu'. And I deliberately avoided sort of the question because I wanted to address it today. There are actually 3 types of Hajj that can be performed. One is Hajjul Ifrad, Hajjul Qiran, and the third is Hajjul Tamattu'. The first 2, Hajjul Ifrad and Hajjul Qiran, don't apply to all of us because they only apply to those who live either in Makkah or in the vicinity of Makkah. Okay? So the only one that applies to us is Hajj Tamattu'. The word Tamattu' means to enjoy or to have pleasure. And the reason why it's named as such is because between the period of completing Umrah and beginning your Hajj, the 25 prohibitions that were in place for someone who was in the state of ihram are lifted. And therefore, there is the opportunity to have enjoyment in those areas that were prohibited while you were in the state of ihram. Now, the reason why this is important is because generally for those of us in these days who go from the West, we have a very, very short journey, right? Literally within a few days of completing Umrah, Hajj will begin. But there are those who go for longer periods of time. And therefore, after completing Umrah, they have a long stretch before the Hajj rituals begin. And therefore, this idea is, the idea behind naming it as such suggests that all of those prohibitions that were in place for one in the state of ihram are lifted, and those areas of enjoyment that were not permitted in the state of ihram are now permissible until Hajj begins. That's why it's called Hajj Tamattu' or Umrah Tamattu'. Now, Hajj Tamattu' has 13 rituals, and we'll go through each of them briefly. I presume many of you may have already completed the pre-read, so we'll skim through them and then inshallah open up the floor for questions, inshallah. So the first of the rituals is the wearing of ihram. Remember that after you completed your Umrah Tamattu', the ihram obligations are over until Hajj begins. And depending on when you arrive in Makkah, generally there are several days between the completion of Umrah and the start of Hajj. In that span of time, you're wearing regular clothes, there are no prohibitions, everything's back to normal. Okay? But now as Hajj begins, you're expected to wear the clothes of ihram once again. Okay? Now, we discussed miqat, the designated place where ihram is worn. For Umrah Tamattu', for those who are coming from Medina, you will wear your ihram at a place called Dhul Hulayfa, and there's a masjid there, Masjid al-Shajara, where you will wear your ihram. Now you're in Makkah already. So where do you wear your ihram? The miqat for wearing ihram for Hajj is Makkah itself, the city of Makkah. Recommendation is to wear it in Masjid al-Haram, right? So I'm not sure where you're staying, but depending on where you're staying, what most people do is, again, there's ghusl that is mustahab. You wear your clothes of ihram. Again, just like in Medina, wearing the clothes of ihram does not put you in the state of ihram. Those are just clothes. It is only after you perform your niyyah, your intention, and you recite the talbiyah, when you become in the state of ihram. Okay? So, recommendation for ihram in Hajj Tamattu' is to wear it on the day of Tarwiyah, which is the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. Okay. Now, it is also recommended, one of the recommendations is that you, like I said, you wear it in Masjid al-Haram after reciting 2 rakat of mustahab salat, either behind maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam or in Hijr of Ismail alayhi salam. The requirements of ihram are identical. 3 requirements. The clothing, which I will not repeat again, we discussed this last week, you can refresh if you need to. The clothing of ihram, the same. For men, 2 pieces of unstitched cloth. For women, regular clothes. And then the performing of niyyah, which we discussed as well last week, and then the recitation of talbiyah. I'm going to cover niyyah one more time. We discussed it at some length last week, but one more time. So there are 3 scenarios, right? First scenario is that this is your wajib hajj. First time performing hajj, it's wajib hajj. Your niyyah will take the form like the first one. I'm wearing ihram for Hajjatul Islam, wajib qurbatan ilallah. Second scenario is that you are performing it for yourself, but it's not your wajib hajj. You've already performed hajj before, and you're going back again. You've been blessed with another opportunity to go back again, and you're performing it exclusively for yourself. Again, the niyyah would be that I am wearing ihram for Hajj Tamattu' qurbatan ilallah. And then the final scenario is that I am wearing ihram for Hajj Tamattu' on behalf of so and so, qurbatan ilallah. If you have performed your wajib hajj, but now have gone back and you are performing hajj niyabatan for a list of individuals, whether they are alive or marhumin. If you are performing and this was a question that came up, so I will clarify, if you are performing a hajj, a wajib hajj, on behalf of someone else, you have been entrusted with that responsibility. Again, that hajj niyyah needs to be exclusive for that individual because you are performing hajj on behalf of that individual's wajib hajj. Repeat once again, the need to pronounce the niyyah is not required. You don't have to verbally pronounce the niyyah as long as you have that conscious intention of what act you are about to embark upon, the niyyah is performed. And again, if you go through the slides, you will see that this format of intention, depending on which scenario applies to you, is consistent throughout all of the rituals. So inshallah, we will not cover the niyyah question again, but feel free to review once you've had a chance to look at the slides. So the second ritual in Hajj is the crux of Hajj, right? Sheikh Abbas, I believe 2 weeks ago, had talked about this. Al-Hajju Arafah, right? There is a tradition that says that Hajj is Arafah. That is the crux of Hajj. And what is perhaps even more fascinating is that there's nothing to do in Arafah. The only requirement is to be at the plains of Arafah. And it's indeed a blessed land because unlike all the other rituals, despite the fact that this is the crux of Hajj, there's nothing to do other than just to sit and hang around, right? So the obligation of Arafah, you don't have to be in the state of wudu, but the obligation of Arafah is to be there from Zawal or from Dhuhr time essentially on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah until sunset, Maghrib time roughly. So that afternoon is the time that you're expected to spend in Arafah. And the organizers, the volunteers will inshallah guide you, inshallah, in terms of the a'mal, the du'as that are generally recited often as a group. But find some time, inshallah, to have some alone time. And I believe Sheikh Abbas may have spoken about this, or will inshallah speak to you about it in the coming days. But that's the time to spend in worship, in ibadah. Also remember that while we don't know where the Imam of our time is at any point in time, what we do know for certain is that on that day, he's on the plains of Arafah, right? And so it is indeed a blessed land, a blessed time. And for those who are blessed with the opportunity of being there, make sure you take advantage of the blessed environment. After the completion of the wuquf at Arafah, which is just staying at Arafah, the next obligation is the wuquf at Muzdalifah, or Mash'ar al-Haram. Mash'ar al-Haram or Muzdalifah, again, there's no specific obligation other than to stay that night on the plains of Muzdalifah. Now, this is the place where you will pick your 70 pebbles, right? So you will find once you arrive in Muzdalifah after Maghrib at Arafah, depending on what time you leave, you might pray at Arafah, or you might leave right away and arrive in Muzdalifah and pray there, depending on logistics and timing, in which you will have to really organize on the ground. It's not something that you plan well in advance. It all depends on how the logistics are going on that day. But at night, at some point, you will arrive in Muzdalifah. Muzdalifah is just an open land. There are no tents, there's nothing. It's just land, open land. And there will be designated areas where people from different groups are designated to go. You find a spot, you pick your pebbles, and the obligation is to just spend the night in Muzdalifah. For men, the period of time where you must spend in Muzdalifah is from dawn to sunrise, from Fajr to sunrise. So men don't leave the plains of Muzdalifah or the area of Muzdalifah until sunrise. Okay? Women and those who are elderly are allowed to leave early, but you have to spend at least a portion of the night in Muzdalifah. You pick your pebbles, and depending again on logistics, sometimes the women head out to Mina earlier, but men generally wait in Muzdalifah until sunrise. The volunteers sometimes will leave early. There are exceptions allowed because they're accompanying generally ladies or seniors, but men in general wait in Muzdalifah until sunrise. Okay, now remember 9th of Dhul Hijjah was day of Arafah, or the time in Arafah, and then now this is the 10th night of Dhul Hijjah, which is spent in Muzdalifah. The sun has risen. It's day of Eid. Everybody back home is getting ready to go to the mosque for Salatul Eid. On that day, there are 3 rituals that must be performed on Eid day, right? The first is Rami, stoning of the pillars. There are 3 pillars. On the day of Eid, you only stone one, the third one. You will see that the first 2 are empty. Nobody stones the first 2 pillars on Eid day. Everybody's stoning just the third pillar. That pillar is called Jamratul Aqaba. Stoning of the pillar. 7 pebbles. Remember, you've picked 70 pebbles from Muzdalifah the night before. On the first day, you are using 7 pebbles to stone Jamratul Aqaba. You have to be certain that 7 pebbles strike, right? You have to see your 7 pebbles strike with certainty, right? If there's a doubt whether one of them struck or not, you throw another pebble. But you need to be certain that 7 pebbles struck Jamratul Aqaba. Okay? You have to throw them by hand. Okay? And the reason why I said you have to willingly throw them by hand, if a pebble sort of drops out of your hand and it hits the wall, that doesn't count. There has to be a deliberate strike of the Jamarat. Timing. For men, Rami must occur from sunrise to sunset. sometime during the day. Because you are in Muzdalifah until sunrise anyway, and then you will walk to Mina, you will be stoning generally between sunrise and sunset anyway. For women, if the group takes you earlier into Mina, on that first day, it is permitted to stone before sunrise. As well as for seniors, elders who are ill, perhaps there is an exception to leave Muzdalifah early, and therefore also to strike Rami earlier if needed or if possible. Okay, you'll see in this picture, this is a picture from several years ago, this is what the pillar looks like now, okay? Or what the pillars look like. It's an elongated wall. It's not like it used to be 30 years ago where it was a small, narrow pillar. It's now an elongated wall because of the millions of people who will go for Hajj. This is what the pillar looks like. And they all look the same, all three of them, okay? The objective is to strike as best you can towards the middle of the pillar, okay? Now, it is busy as you approach the pillar in the middle section of the pillar. The technique is you go to the far end of the pillar, and from the far end of the pillar, it's completely quiet. Everybody wants to strike from the beginning or from the middle. But if you go to the far end and then you turn towards the middle, not only is it quiet, you will actually see your 7 pebbles strike. As crazy as it sounds, those who have been there before, you'll find it's very, very easy to see your your own pebble strike, despite the fact that hundreds are going towards the pillars at the same time. Okay, so the obligation is to strike towards the middle of the pillar, and if you are doubtful about whether or not your pebble struck, throw another one, because you need to have certainty that 7 pebbles struck the pillar. Okay. Okay. Next obligation for the day of Eid is the qurbani, the sacrifice of the animal. I'm not sure whether they will be taking Hujjaj to sacrifice themselves or not this year. Okay, I'm seeing Inayat Bhai and Arif shake their head. So the plan, inshallah, will be that volunteers or agents will be designated to go and perform qurbani on your behalf. Okay? So the way that works then is once the Rami is complete, you will come back to the tent and you will wait for word from whoever it is that is representing you to perform your qurbani on your behalf that your qurbani has been performed. You will do your niyyah, they will perform it on your behalf. Just because of logistical reasons, it's not possible for everybody to go, millions of people to go and do their own qurbani. And so the organizers typically will make arrangements for however many 100 people there are. One at a time, the names will be read and the qurbani will be performed. You will then get word that your qurbani has now been completed and that ritual of yours has been completed on your behalf. And so I'll avoid the rest of the section on qurbani, but now you are performing the third and final ritual for the day of Eid. Remember though that you cannot perform this ritual until you get word that your qurbani has been complete, because all of these rituals need to be completed in sequence, right? So on the day of Eid, you perform your Rami, you go back to the tent, you now wait. You wait until you get word that your qurbani has been performed. Qurbani has been performed, you now proceed to the third and final act for the day of Eid, which is taqsir for ladies, which is again clipping of the hair like you did at the end of Umrah. And for men, this is the opportunity when people will shave their heads. Amongst the Ahl Sunnah, they even shave their heads earlier after Umrah. We don't shave our heads after Umrah, it's only taqsir after Umrah. But on the day of Eid, after performing qurbani, is when it is recommended to do halaq, right? To shave your head on the day of Eid. Okay. Remember that all this time, from the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, when you wore your ihram in Masjid al-Haram, you are in the state of ihram. The clothes of ihram are worn. The 25 acts that are prohibited in the state of ihram are in place. Once halaq is done, and the shaving of the head or taqsir in the case of ladies has been completed, Then there are only 3 prohibitions that remain. Everything else is lifted. The 3 prohibitions that remain are intimacy, use of perfume, and hunting. Those 3 prohibitions remain. Otherwise, all the remaining prohibitions that were in place get lifted, meaning you're now back in regular clothes. You can wear your ihram. Some people want to continue wearing their ihram, which is perfectly fine. Typically, you will want a new set because it's really dirty by then. But most people are wearing regular clothes by then, only keeping in mind that these 3 prohibitions remain in place. Now, the next set of rituals are the tawaf of Hajj, the 2 rakat salat that follows the tawaf of Hajj, and sa'i. The niyyah might be a little bit different, but the rituals are identical to what we discussed in Umrah. The performing of tawaf, the 2 rakat salat, and sa'i, identical. Just the niyyah is different. Okay? So these acts are performed after halaq is done. Okay, so now the 10th day of Dhul Hijjah, which is the day of Eid, you've performed your 3 rituals. People will take some rest, and then you have an option to go out back to Makkah. I'm not sure where you're staying, but to go back to Makkah to perform these rituals. These rituals, the tawaf of Hajj, salat, and sa'i, can be performed on the 11th night of Dhul Hijjah, 11th day, 12th night, depending on when you have time or when you wish to perform it. There's no obligation to rush to get it completed other than just watch where your departure time is, right? You have to keep that in mind and make sure that you have the time to complete the remaining rituals before your time essentially runs out. The exception is that for those ladies, and I'm assuming, Saurabai, there might be a session that's going to be organized for ladies as well, for Masail that are specific to ladies. But for ladies who are expecting their cycle to begin during this period of time, their monthly cycle, they are permitted to perform the tawaf, salat, and sa'i, in tawaf al-nisa and the 2 rakat salat that follows as well, before leaving for Arafah. Okay, so there is an exception, but for the most part, and I believe there will be a session organized specifically for ladies Masail, but for the most part, everybody is performing these rituals after the day of Eid. Okay, there are exceptions for elders and those who are ill, and ladies, as I mentioned, in those circumstances. But generally speaking, everybody will be performing their tawaf, salat, and sa'i after the day of Eid. And there are different options. The organizers will guide you in terms of what they believe is the best course of action, the best time to go to Masjid al-Haram to complete these rituals. After these 3 rituals are completed, okay, tawaf of Hajj, salat, which is 2 rakat salat behind maqam, and sa'i, the use of perfume now is permitted. Remember, we had said there were 3 restrictions: use of perfume, intimacy, and hunting. After these 3 rituals are completed, the use of perfume is now permitted. Only 2 restrictions remain: intimacy and hunting. Then the next set of rituals, there we go, tawaf al-nisa and 2 rakat salat. Again, these 2 rituals are identical to how you performed tawaf earlier for Umrah as well as the tawaf of Hajj and the 2 rakat salat as well. No difference other than niyyah. Okay? And just like we discussed earlier, there is an exception for those ladies who need to perform these rituals before leaving for Arafah. There is an exception, as well as those who are elderly or ill. But otherwise, for most of us, we would perform these actions after tawaf of Hajj, salat, and sa'i. So everything is being performed in sequence. Upon completion of tawaf al-nisa, and the salat of tawaf, the obligation or the restriction of intimacy gets lifted. Okay. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that even if you are performing this Hajj on behalf of someone else, whether it is a wajib Hajj for someone else or you're performing it niyabatan for a list of loved ones, the restriction of intimacy is upon the individual who's performing this Hajj, right? Not on those on behalf of whom you're performing it. And therefore, you must perform these actions in order for that restriction to get lifted for yourself. Okay? It doesn't matter who you're performing it for. You have to perform these rituals in order for that restriction to get lifted upon yourself. On the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, in the afternoon at Dhuhr time, the restriction of hunting automatically gets lifted. That's when now all restrictions are lifted. Hunting is one that doesn't apply to us anyway. But after completion of Tawaf al-Nisa and Salat of Tawaf, the restriction of intimacy now gets lifted. So what we've covered so far, wearing of Ihram, the Wuquf at Arafah, Wuquf at Muzdalifah, 3 rituals on the day of Eid, Rami, Qurbani, and Halaq or Taqsir. Okay, so that's 6. Then we covered the Tawaf of Hajj, the 2 rakat Salat, Sa'i. That's 3, that's 9. Then we also covered Tawaf al-Nisa, 10. And 11, we also covered the 2 rakat Salat. Okay? We said there were 13 rituals. So we've covered 11 so far very quickly. 2 more to cover. And that will bring Hajj to an end. Wuquf at Mina. So we will arrive in Mina on the day of Eid. Right? There is an obligation to spend time in Mina. And we spend you're obligated to spend at a minimum of half the night on the 11th night of Dhul Hijjah and the 12th night of Dhul Hijjah. Whether it is the first half of the night or the second half of the night, but you have to spend a minimum of half the night. You can spend the whole night, but you have to spend at least half the night on the 11th and the 12th. Okay? So generally what people do is that on the day of Eid, 10th day of Dhul Hijjah, people will complete their rituals for Eid day and then spend the time until midnight because that's the first half of the night. Okay? If you have the energy and you are up to it and you're pumped enough to keep going, the second half of the night, you can leave and go to Makkah to perform those rituals. Other people who are tired choose to spend the night in Mina, rest it out because there are obligations on the next day, and then they will wait for the first half of the 12th night to be completed and go essentially a day later. Right? So there's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on the individual. It all depends on how the organizers are recommending. In the past, what we have done for many years is to actually give mu'mineen, the Hujjaj, some time to rest and go out on the 12th night. So you spend the whole night on the 11th in Mina, you sleep, you rest it out. It's been a busy few days. It'll be extremely hot, right? And you rest it out the whole day of the 11th of Dhul Hijjah. There's one more ritual in Mina that needs to be performed that we will talk about in a moment. But then you leave on the 12th night, okay? So different options. But the obligation of wuquf in Mina is half the night, 11th and the 12th. 13th generally doesn't happen, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And again, the obligation is just to stay in Mina. There's no specific a'mal in Mina. On the 12th day of Dhul Hijjah, after Dhuhr, is when you are allowed to leave Mina. Okay? So the 12th obligation is wuquf at Mina. And the 13th and final obligation is Rami again. Remember we said on the first day, on the day of Eid, you're only stoning 7 pebbles on the 3rd of the pillars. But on the 11th and the 12th day, the 2 days that you're there in Mina, between sunrise and sunset, you're obligated to stone all 3 pebbles, all 3 pillars, with 7 pebbles each. Okay? So on the 11th day, if you choose to spend the entire night, then sometime during the day, typically after Fajr, before it gets too hot, the group leaves, walks towards Jamarat, and you stone each of those 3 pillars down one at a time in that sequence. You'll get to the first one, you stone 7, second one 7, and the third one 7. Same rules as we discussed for the day of Eid. Make sure you walk around towards the far end of the pillar, you turn in, and you'll see your 7 pebble strike. Aim for the middle, you do your niyyah, and you stone your 7 pebbles at a time. So you've essentially used, if you're a good striker, you use 21 on, you use 7 on the first day, 21, 21. So you've used 49 pebbles so far, right? You actually have 21 left because you picked up 70. Generally, those 21 are used in case you miss one, you drop one, you're not sure if some of you are struck, so you can use some of those extra pebbles. If you don't leave Mina until the night of the 13th, which generally doesn't happen because we all leave by Dhuhr time, but if you're stuck for whatever reason, then if you're there at Maghrib time on the 13th, then you're obligated to stay the night. And then if you stay the night, the next day you have to go and stone 777. That's why you pick 70. Okay? Generally speaking, we don't stay. Nobody, I haven't in years seen anybody staying there past Dhuhr on the 12th of the Hajj. Everybody makes their way back to Makkah, so it doesn't apply. Therefore, the 21 extra pebbles that you have with you, in the event that you need to, you can use them. And so, to wrap up, 13 obligations of Hajj Tamattu. Wearing ihram, wuquf at Arafah, wuquf at Muzdalifah, Rami, so on the day of Eid, Rami, which is stoning only one of the pillars, the third of the pillars, Qurbani, which is the sacrifice of the animal, and Halaq or Taqsir, as the case may apply, for the day of Eid. Then you have all restrictions lifted except intimacy, use of perfume, and hunting. 3 rituals that follow: Tawaf of Hajj, 2 rakat salat, and Sa'i. When these 3 rituals are completed, the restriction of perfume gets lifted. Then you have Tawaf al-Nisa and 2 rakat salat that follows. When these 2 rituals get performed, the restriction on intimacy gets lifted. And hunting, as I mentioned, gets lifted automatically on the 13th of Dhul Hijjah. The next 2 obligations spend a portion of the night on the 11th and the 12th of Dhul Hijjah in Mina. And the last ritual is the act of Rami itself on the 11th day and the 12th day of Dhul Hijjah. So if you keep the last one in mind, if you choose to leave on the 11th night after midnight, remember you have to make your way back to Mina because you have that obligation to stone on the 11th day. So if people leave after midnight to go to Makkah to perform their tawaf and sa'i and tawaf al-nisa, you have to make your way back before sunset in order to complete your Rami obligation for the 11th, right? So generally speaking, either way, you'll have to come back at some point, right? Whether you leave on the 12th night or the 11th night, you have to come back before sunset in order to complete that obligation of Rami on the 11th day and the 12th day of Dhul Hijjah. I'll stop there. I think I've taken up more time than I expected, but happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Akil. So we will go now for questions. So we'll start on the in-person folks. So if you have any questions, let's try to keep the questions right on the topic, inshallah, so we can cover the Hajj Masails. And again, these are complicated rules if you are listening for the first time. So don't worry, we have group leaders who will guide you through the process. Group leaders have over 100 years of experience combined. So we'll guide you through everything. Will work out inshallah. So nothing to worry about in terms of the steps and the rules, etc. But just wanted to make sure that you're all familiar with it. Anyways, let's start with any questions on the Hajj Masails. So wait until I give you the mic so the online viewers can also listen.
Assalamu alaikum. We talked about the pebbles which we are striking on the Jumrah Uqba on the first day of the 10th Zil-Hijjah.
Yes.
How big should be the pebble?
Yeah, so good question. So Ayatollah Sistani has in his Masail of Hajj a description that says that the pebbles need to be soft and dotted and the size of essentially your fingertip. It's not easy to find 70 pebbles that meet that description perfectly. But generally speaking, you want to find maybe pebbles that are the size of your fingertip. Okay, that would be the ideal. You will not be able to find the perfect 70 pebbles. If everybody had to find perfect 70 pebbles, we'd never find them. But generally, the size will be roughly your fingertip.
Thank you very much. The next question is, we are striking the pebbles to the pillar or the wall. And how would we strike that? Whether it will be like this direction, like this direction, like this direction?
So, I'll say two things. One is most people strike this way. If you read the Masail of Ayatollah Sistani, for example, he says that you hold it in your finger and you flick it like this. Okay? That's difficult to do when the pillar is not like it used to be. The pillar is so much longer and you're so much further away, right? To flick the pebble towards the jamarat and to see it strike in the middle of the pillar is very difficult. So most people will throw the pebble this way, but there's no restriction that says which angle you must throw the pebble at. Doesn't matter as long as you throw it and you see it strike. It's probably easier just to throw it this way.
And if I miss more than 7 pebbles and I'm not certain that whether it hit at the center of the wall, can I collect the same pebbles on the floor and use them?
No. There's a collection area near the wall that is deep. So you can't go back and collect your pebbles. So normally what people do is you're aiming for approximately the center. You don't have to be precise. But most people will take 10 or 11 pebbles with them on the first day, right? You don't want to take all your 70 pebbles in the rush. You don't want to drop your pebbles and then you're scrambling to figure out, but you can borrow if you're stuck. But most people will take, let's say 10 or 11 pebbles as an insurance policy, just in case you're not sure about your 7. But it's not possible that all 7 don't strike. It really is not that difficult. Maybe 1 you might be doubtful, or 2 you might be doubtful. I'm not sure if that one struck or not. So you take an extra 3 or 4 pebbles with you as a backup, just in case, and then you throw the extra 1 or 2. You don't have to throw more than 7. You need to be sure that 7 struck, and after that, you're done.
Thank you very much. I don't want to ask many questions. I want to give the opportunity to the other people, but our last question, which is, I'm in doubt in that one. We are doing the halak or taksir, what you said, that it will be done in the Mina. Do we need to men's? We need to clean shave, or we can take a portion of the hair out?
So if you do, so the option of taksir is available for men as well. Okay? Halaq is not wajib, but one of the 2 is wajib. Right? So women, obviously you cannot do halaq. You have to do taksir. For men, you can do halaq or taksir. So halaq is not wajib, but highly recommended to do halaq, especially if it's your first Hajj. By halaq, we mean you take the razor and you go all the way to the scalp. Right? If you take a trimmer and then you say, you know what, you're going to go trim your head first, and then you're going to go and do the razor shave, by then taksir is done. Because as soon as you take the trimmer and you take your hair off, it's done. So if you want to do halaq, you go to, people are there in Mina with razors. They'll use a brand new razor, they'll open it up, and you go straight to the scalp.
There's no kafara if we do the...
No, there's no kafara. If you do taqsir instead, there's no kafara, no.
Thank you very
But
much.
you'll be the only one with hair left on your head.
So on a lighter note, if you don't shave off, don't do halak, then in night when you're sleeping, you will take it off anyways. So you might as well do the right thing.
Abiba.
So Akil, if you are completely shaven like you said,
Yes.
what do you do?
So if you're like me, unfortunately this year I'm not blessed enough to accompany the group, but I typically will grow my hair for at least a month and a half, so that I have something. But you can't do halak of the beard, but so I will typically grow my hair for a month and a half, so that when I'm there for Hajj I have something to shave off.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I was wondering, you didn't mention in Tawaf al-Nisa that there's no sa'i?
Yes. So there is no sa'i after Tawaf al-Nisa. So Tawaf al-Nisa and 2 rakat salat, and that's it.
Yes, and also about the pebbles, when we go and do it for Aqaba, then the next day we do it for the other 3 pillars, yes?
So there are only 3. Aqaba is one of them.
Yes.
So the first one, the second one, and the third one. So Aqaba is the third one. Ula, Wusta, and Aqaba.
And thereafter we go for Tawaf from Makkah?
So the sequence and the timing with which you will go to Makkah for the Tawaf will really depend on how the organizers are recommending the logistics for the day, or for those 2 days. Really, that 11th and 12th day. I can only talk about what the obligations are for that day, or for those 2 days. I will leave it to the organizers to deal with what's happening on the ground at that time. It varies from year to year. Generally, what we have done is 11th day in the morning after Fajr, you walk to the Jamarat, you do your Rami of all 3 pebbles, you come back to the tent. You spend the day in Mina. 12th night, half the night you spend in Mina. After midnight, the group leaves to go to Makkah to perform their tawaf, sa'i, and tawaf al-nisa, if possible, if you have time. In the morning, they then walk back to Mina, do your Rami for the 12th day of Dhul Hijjah, and then after Dhuhr leave and walk back. That's
you.
generally how we have done it, but I will leave it to Habib Bhai and Inayat Bhai, Arif Bhai to coordinate on the day, but that's generally how we've done it in the past.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any more questions here on the? So I just want to cover this logistics on the ground, right? Just want to remind the Mu'mineen, it's extremely hot when we will be there in the Holy Lands. Once we are in Arafat, right, we'll go from Makkah to Arafat by bus. From Arafat, once we finish the wukuf, right, at Maghrib time or just after that, we'll go by bus to Muzdalifah. Yes, so far everybody's with me, right? From Muzdalifah to our tents in Mina, we are walking with our knapsack, the lightest knapsack you can carry. Then from the tents, right, on the day of Eid, we are walking all the way to hit the Jamarat, the big one, right? That is 1.5 hour to 2 hours walk in the sun. And then from the Aqaba Shaitan, we are coming back another 1.5 hours to the tent. I can assure you, with lots of experience from the organizers, that you'll be tired. So our recommendation is just stay there. Once your Qurbani is done, you'll get an information text. Then you go and do your halak outside the tent, taksir for the ladies. And then all we want you to do is have a solid lunch and just sleep. All right? So don't worry about the tawaf pieces, right at this stage. We'll guide you accordingly. And then we have got experience where we know that our brothers and sisters of Ahl Sunnah, right, are going to be back in Mina. This is the time, the next night, where we have the opportunity to go to the haram, do our tawaf of Hajj, 2 rakat namaz, sa'i, and tawaf nisa, all in that span from midnight till Fajr time. And you'll be so happy you have done everything in a reasonable amount of time with reasonable amount of rush in the haram. But we will guide you accordingly. No stressing, yeah? Thank you. Okay, any more questions? There's one question, Akil, before I go from the line. is footwear allowed when we are doing tawaf and sa'i?
So, footwear. So once you're in Masjid al-Haram, you're not allowed to wear slippers. I mean, you're inside the masjid, right? Women, as we mentioned earlier, as part of hijab and while in the state of ihram, you're wearing socks anyway. For men, you're generally not wearing any footwear while you are in the haram. Whether you are performing sa'i or you're doing your tawaf, you are barefoot. Okay.
All right. Okay, one of the questions is, do we make our own decision when to do tawaf? The group will guide you about when is the best time to do the tawaf, but if you want to go and do your tawaf on your own at your own time, you are more than happy to do so. Okay. Unscented lotions, are they allowed in the state of ihram?
Yeah, so I think this similar question came up last week as well. So application of oils of any kind, not permitted in the state of ihram unless they're for medicinal reasons. Right? So anything scented or oil application, not allowed while in the state of ihram unless for medical reasons you need to.
Okay, if ihram is worn on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah and we have to be in Arafat on the 9th, what happens from the time of wearing ihram to Arafat? We go back to the hotel or stay in the haram? So this is a logistical question. So as Akil Bhai mentioned, we will wear the clothes of ihram in the hotel. We will be staying at Al-Kiswa Hotel, which is a 20 to 30 minute walk to the haram. So all those people who are ready and energized will walk to the Masjid al-Haram, and this is the time where our brothers and sisters from Ahl Sunnah will be leaving Makkah to go to Mina, and then they'll go to Arafat. So that is the time that Masjid al-Haram is the least busiest. So we can walk to the Haram, then go and do our namaz, maghrib, for example, whatever. Then we will recite once you make the niyat, you recite talbiyah. This is now you're in the state of ihram. The organizers, based on the logistics on the ground, will tell you need to be back in the hotel by a certain time. It may be 10 p.m., it may be 11 p.m., based on what the buses are going to take us to Arafat, right? So once you're in the state of ihram, you have done your talbiyah, you are now in the state of ihram, you can come back to the hotel, and then you rest. You can go in your rooms, sleep for a while. We will then make an announcement that what time then you need to be down in the lobby so the buses can take us to Arafat.
Just keep in mind that once the talbiyah is decided, you are now in ihram, and all the prohibitions for one who is in the state of ihram are in place. So you're officially now in the state of ihram. Right?
What if, because of constant doubt, we don't have enough pebbles for the next day stoning? Where do we get more pebbles from?
So there are separate masail for one who is kathiru shak, one who is constantly in doubt. If you run out of pebbles, you can borrow, right? Because everybody has extra 21 pebbles. So, but if you are a person who is just constantly doubting, then like in every other wajib ritual, you're at the point where you can ignore your doubts, right? Because if that's just your natural behavior where you're constantly doubting, second guessing, did I do this correctly? Did I do my wudu properly? Did I pray properly? And you're praying again and again and again. For that kind of individual, they're allowed to ignore their doubts, and the same would apply in this case, right? So if you're just naturally that kind of person, you can ignore those doubts. But if you run out of pebbles, you drop them, you lose them, borrow.
Okay, if someone is bald, right, no hair, from before Hajj, what is their taqsir? Obviously not bald by choice, but because of no hair growth.
Yes. So generally it's recommended not to shave or cut your hair. I believe it's a month in advance of the Hajj dates, and therefore you'll find that people like Arif and myself would start growing our hair at least a month in advance. So you could do that. If you actually have no hair whatsoever, for whatever reason, then you can trim from your beard as well, right? So taqsir is allowed. Halaq is highly recommended, but if you don't have hair, you can trim from the beard.
Okay. Some logistical questions which we will cover a little bit later, but just one question which I want to cover here is regarding medications. Do we need to have prescriptions for our regular medications for the airport? So, Mominin, all prescription medication you carry with you all the time because you will need it no matter where you are. So even when you go to Arafat, for example, right, when you're doing the Hajj, you need to carry your main medications with you, right? So you don't put it in your luggage because if the luggage gets lost, then you're out of your medications, right? So please make sure that you do that accordingly, yeah? Let me see. We covered unscented lotion, right? I think that's done. Any more questions as far as I see? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is about, and Brother Megji already answered a part of it. On 10th of Zulhijj, after we've done taqsir and halaq, and our obligations are done, if we still have the energy, can we go and do tawaf on 10th itself? And if we are, I understand the state of ihram ends at that time, can we wear shoes and go to Makkah, or do we keep wearing slippers?
So two things. One is, can you wear shoes? Yes, you can, because remember, only 3 restrictions remain after the rituals of Eid day are completed, right? So after halaq or taqsir, whatever the case may be, is completed, then other than those 3 restrictions which we have talked about, everything else is lifted, so shoes can be worn. That's one. Can you go on Eid day back to Makkah to perform your rituals? The answer is yes. However, remember that you have an obligation to spend half the night on the 11th night in Mina, which means you have to be back by midnight, right? So that you can spend second half of the night in Mina. If you have not been there before, I would strongly advise against it. Because logistically, if you don't know your way around and you don't know the language, even if you have the energy, it will be difficult, right? So I have not seen in the many years anybody do it that way. People have gone on the 11th night because they're up to it and they want to. But on the day of Eid itself, very, very difficult to go because you'll have so many people to contend with, as well as you have to make your way back by midnight.
And also about wearing hat for those without hair. Can we wear a hat or head covering in sun and sunglasses?
So hat in the state of ihram, no. Sunglasses for if you have a medical condition, let's say because it causes migraines or whatever, then yes. But otherwise, just as an adornment or a form of beautification, no.
Yeah, just to add to Akil in terms of coming back to the tents in Mina, as Akil mentioned, is not an easy task. Normally, one thing, we are so used to our logistics here in this part of the world or Europe or America, right? We can take taxi, come back here, Uber. It doesn't work that way. So if you are in Makkah, you're going for tawaf. Now you need to come back to Mina. The taxis can only take you a little bit. Then you need to walk all the way to Mina, and depending on if our logistics, you can come all the way to the tent. That's another hour walk from Jamarat to the tents in Mina. So lots of walking, right? So we need to look at you individually, like how healthy you are, how fit you are, can you take the heat, right? And then do your decisions accordingly, right? But the group will be there to guide you, and then you make your decisions, inshallah.
Thank you. Yes, at the back.
He's bringing the mic.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah for hosting. Just a quick question. In terms of the obligations, everything has to be finished by the 13th, right? Or is the 13th a buffer if, say, there's delays? Like you were saying, brother, some people, for example, they end up staying the night and then they have to do the 21. So does the 13 act as a buffer, or?
No, so the obligation to spend the 11th and the 12th nights in Mina, and the obligation to perform your Rami on the 11th and 12th day of Dhul Hijjah are the obligations for those 2 specific days. The 3 obligations of tawaf, salatul tawaf, and sa'i, tawafun nisa, and the 2 rakat salat that follows tawafun nisa can be performed at any time. As long as if you are there till the, 20th of Dhul Hijjah, for example, then you don't have to perform these rituals on those 2 days. You have the time to perform them as and when you choose to. 2 things to keep in mind though. One is, for as long as you have not performed those rituals, the prohibitions remain. That's one. Number 2, a lot of Hujjaj, while many are leaving, a lot of Hujjaj are now back into Makkah. And the ability to perform tawaf and sa'i becomes tough when you now have everybody there at the same time. Remember, at Umrah time, people are coming into Makkah at varying points in time, right? So people are performing Umrah at different times. But Hajj, everybody's there now together. Everybody is already congregated. Hajj is complete. The entire body of 3 million people are now in Makkah. And so performing the tawaf and sa'i and delaying it significantly does pose risk, especially if your journey is happening very quickly, like within a day or 2 days. I would not recommend taking a chance to delay. Okay. Yes, some questions.
Wait.
Just if you can wait, we'll give you a mic. Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can go ahead and then we'll yeah.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. For glasses, like, what if you have transition glasses? So it's not sunglasses per se,
That's
but
fine.
it's fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, transition glasses is fine.
Okay. And then one more question. I think like we will have to take Haramain train, if I'm not mistaken, from Medina to Makkah. How do you go to Masjid Sajara?
Yeah, so I heard that yesterday. I mean, in the past we've taken the bus. So I don't know logistically what the group is planning to do, whether they will take you to Masjid al-Haram or Masjid al-Shajara first before they go to the train station. However, the train does pass Miqat. The train does pass Miqat. Yeah. Yes, sister.
The question I have is Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
So this is going to be a very condensed, highly populated area with a lot of people moving for tawaf, inshallah, consistently and good flow. But we are mixed, so men and women are next to each other, and I'm going to be, and the rest of the women will be part of the group. So are there logistics for tawaf to kind of minimize contact? Not only contact, but I think with the different body sizes and, how are we doing this? Is everybody obviously doing it with their individual, responsibility and niyyah and intention, but logistically, is there a group component to this for safety, or at least for flow?
So in Medina, the men and women are separate in Masjid al-Nabi. In Makkah, however, there is no segregation, right? I mean, they try to segregate at Salat time so that men and women are separate, praying separately. However, practically, as tawaf is being performed, it is impossible to segregate men and women, and therefore, if you're going with a male, in the family, husband, brother, father, whatever the case may be, then generally, women will go with a male. If it's only women, let's say it's a group of a few ladies who are going together, then group together and go together. But unfortunately, there is no other way to manage in that throng of people who are performing tawaf.
Thank you.
Right? Yes. So if you just wait for the mic, if you could just pass the mic to that sister there. At the back. Yeah.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Just
salam.
a follow up to that question. If we're with a partner or a buddy and that person or you needed to leave to redo your wudu, for example, can you take someone with you and then they would restart where you left off together?
So, question, yeah. So the answer is, remember, if you had a chance to attend the session last week, we talked about the rule of 4, right?
Yeah.
So if the 4th round of tawaf is completed, and let's say you or your partner needs to leave the tawaf area, the mataf area, to go and perform wudu, for example, can the other individual also leave with them? The answer is yes. But they cannot leave if the fourth round is not completed, because then their tawaf would be null and void. So if the fourth round is completed, yeah, they can pause their tawaf as well, accompany you, or you can accompany them, perform your wudu, come back, and resume from where you left off.
Okay. But if they felt like they really needed to, can they restart with the other individual?
Yeah, I wouldn't take any ritual like that lightly, where you just say, because my partner is going to stop, I'm going to stop as well. If there's no reason for me to stop, then and the fourth round is not completed, then I should perform my tawaf, and then I can accompany you for your tawaf, even though I'm just going around in circles. I'm not performing tawaf as such. But if you need help, or you are helping someone else, you can accompany them as well, because it really doesn't take long to get the tawaf completed. So you can accompany someone after. But I wouldn't just arbitrarily stop your tawaf because someone else is stopping their tawaf.
Okay, thank you. And just another question.
So before you go there, so
Sorry.
just one quick tip. So every time we are doing tawaf, right, you will have a small bag with you where you put in your slippers, and you carry a water bottle. So if your wudu breaks, you come out of the tawaf, but you don't exit the whole Masjidul Haram.
Okay.
You go quickly on the side, renew your wudu with your water bottle, come back in quickly and start again. So the gap has to be really minimized from the time you stop and you get back into the tawaf.
Okay.
But the water bottle is very good tip. So you don't have to go and exit, go to the hotel and do those and come back.
Okay,
Yeah? Okay,
thank you.
1 second, yeah?
Sorry, I just have one
Yeah,
more
sorry,
question.
go ahead,
Sorry.
yeah.
You mentioned no oils or fragrance. Some sunscreens don't have either of them. Can we apply those?
Sunscreens that don't have oil
Or fragrance.
If you message me separately, let me double check.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other answer to this question is avoid all the restrictions are there for us to abide by. So unless there's a medical condition, have faith in Allah, do your wajibats without the sunscreens and the oils if you don't really need have a medical condition.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
What are the directions about doing the tawaf at the first floor or second floor as per the Shia fiqh?
So we touched on this briefly last week. So it reminds me of something I didn't cover. So tawaf and sa'i cannot be performed. So tawaf cannot be performed above the Kaaba. Okay. Therefore, you can perform tawaf. Most people will perform tawaf on the ground floor on the mataf area, right? And that's where you really want to perform tawaf, because it's a much smaller circle. You perform it on, first of all, you can't perform it on the rooftop because that's above the Kaaba. Sa'i, on the other hand, you have two choices. You either perform in the basement or you perform on the main floor. Both are below the mountains of Safa and Marwa. There is a floor above that, which is above the mountain of Safa and Marwa. You're not permitted to perform sa'i on that floor. Jamarat, sorry, I didn't mention Jamarat. Jamarat as well, because of the millions of people that they are accommodating, is now a multi-floor structure, right? So the pillar that you saw in that picture, it's like that on multiple floors, right? You have to be at the ground floor. So that's the reason why it's important to go with the organizers, because there's a path that leads you to the ground floor. Otherwise, you take the wrong path, you'll end up on the first floor, second floor. That's above the area of the original pillar. So you need to get to ground floor. And it's easier to get to ground floor, but you just need to know the direction to the ground floor, right? Sorry, yes?
After the tawaf, we are performing the 2 rakats, wajib rakats.
Yeah.
That should be at the back of the
Maqam.
Ibrahim.
Yes.
So how is it possible when there are millions of people in the Kaaba and we have to do the 2 rakats at the back of
So the question, I'll repeat the question. So the question brother had was the 2 rakat salat that follows the tawaf. How is it possible when there are millions of people performing tawaf in that area? How do you recite the 2 rakat namaz salat? Everybody's reciting 2 rakat salat, and therefore there is a designated area where the local I don't know, I want to call them police, but guards are cordoning off an area for people to recite salat. So there is an area behind maqam that is cordoned off, that people are not doing tawaf in, and it's a designated area. People always finishing the tawaf coming to pray. finishing the tawaf, coming to pray, so you don't have to worry. Sometimes you might have to wait for a few minutes for a spot, but you come, you wait there, and they will open up the area. Everybody's just reciting 2 rakat salat and moving on. So you don't have to worry. There is designated area, and there are guards there protecting that area because everybody's reciting 2 rakat salat.
Okay, thank you,
So
Akil.
this
One
is
second. Let's go online and we'll come back, okay? So if I throw a stone and in mid-air hits someone else's stone, but it does hit the jamarat, does that count?
I would throw another one, but that's a really good striker if you're able to strike someone else's pebble and then also have it strike the middle.
Must be playing pool, I think.
That's quite a skill. I'd throw another one.
I would agree with Akil.
I would throw another one because
one.
you want your pebble to strike directly towards Jamarat.
Okay.
That's one I haven't heard in many years, though. I've actually ever heard.
Okay, so 2 more and then we go here. So you said if I trim the hair and then shave it, it's not really shaving. So can I trim the hair short before leaving for Hajj so I can just shave while there?
Yeah, so if you, after Umrah is completed, and there are no prohibitions, if you want, you could trim your hair a little bit because there's no prohibitions, so that it's shorter before you get your head shaved. Yeah, so there's no problem with that.
Okay, when you say perfume condition is lifted, so does that include fragranced creams, shampoos, and conditioner?
Yes. So because there's no perfume restriction after those 3 rituals, then yeah, you could use scented soap, perfume, whatever the case may be.
Okay, we'll take one last question from here, and then inshallah I would like to invite Arif for a few comments, and inshallah we finish by 11:30. But for all of those in person, Inayat Bhai and family have arranged some chai and snacks for you. So we'll start with the ladies, and then inshallah the men can go. So last question, go ahead.
I was wondering, when you finish Hajj and you're going to do Tawaf al-Nisa, do you come back and do ghusl again and everything?
So there is no obligation to perform a ghusl at any point. All the there are only recommendations to perform a ghusl. Okay. Generally, the recommendation to perform a ghusl is before wearing ihram, right? So before you start your umrah, you perform your ghusl mustahab before you wear your ihram. Same applies before you wear your ihram for Hajj on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. It is mustahab to do ghusl and wear your ihram after that. After that, there is no recommendation to perform a ghusl after that.
Because you're not in ihram.
You're not in ihram anymore.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, okay, so that brings end to our questions for this seminar. So inshallah next week we are back to online 2 p.m. East, inshallah. And now we are getting a little bit more lighter. It's like talking about Medina and the significance, inshallah, and then Makkah and then logistics. So I want to pass the mic to Arif Lillah. As you see, he's one of our Hajj volunteers. He's Inayat by his son-in-law. And if I go for Tawaf, I always take Arif with me.
Assalamu alaikum. So a lot of these seminars are designed to help you guys prepare in terms of getting ready to go. And a lot of the questions that you're asking us from a fiqh point of view are great. The practical is really when we get there, we'll review all of these things again and work with you to help you through this entire process. That's our main focus when we come with you guys in terms of performing Hajj, right? So you'll find that it's not as confusing as it sounds, right? So when you actually go through the process, and the beauty is that we perform Umrah first, so that gives you guys the experience that you guys need to then continue on to perform Hajj. The main thing for you guys right now is understanding what the rituals mean and the value you guys can derive out of it, because this is an opportunity for some that you'll never get again, right? So you've taken all of the time in terms of preparing to buy your packages and get to this point. you still have time now to prepare and figure out what exactly is that you want to accomplish for yourself, right? So this is a journey for you to get closer to Allah, and it's an opportunity, right? And it's not going to be easy, and I can guarantee that, right? The heat, some of the questions with regards to being able to travel and do multiple things in one day, in theory sounds good. But when you start actually going through the entire process, it is difficult. And it does require everybody to do some physical preparation in terms of walking. And even from now, you guys have roughly about a month left before you leave. Start walking, because there is a lot of walking, especially on the days when we're performing the rituals of Hajj. Right? And we're talking not like 2-3 kilometers, we're talking like 5, 10, 15 kilometers or more in one day. And it's a lot under extreme circumstances. So prepare yourselves in terms of physically and then also mentally and spiritually. Those are, if you do that work now, you will definitely feel like you've achieved something for yourself. And I think that's really the most important piece out of all of this.
So just as a reminder, so we have 2 packages from Canada, right? The first round and then the second round, which was Cumberland. So Arif is going to be leading the Cumberland, group of Hujjaj from Canada. And I just wanted to add one question which came in online was, Akil Bhai mentioned about pebbles, right? 7 first day and then, 21 the next 2 days. So that's 42 plus 7, 49 minimum we need to hit, right? The spiritual aspects is we need to now start thinking what vices do we have in ourselves. We need to come up with 49 vices. So that's a homework for us to do in the next 4 to 5 weeks. So every ritual has a spiritual aspect. So let's focus on that. Yes, we'll address all the questions about lotions and sandals, right? The cooling towel, all those are good. I would like all of us to also focus equal amount of time on the spiritual aspects of it. Otherwise, Hajj, as Abbas Bhai mentioned in the first seminar, it will pass like this. 2 weeks will be gone. But if you start thinking about all the goals you need to achieve and how you will come as a changed person, those notes have to be written now, because over there, things are happening so fast. Even when we arrive in Medina, they're telling us we have 3 days. By the time we arrive, at least the Canadian package, 1 night is almost gone. So you've only 2 nights, give or take, right? So things will happen very fast. So let's prepare the notes from now, okay? And I'll leave you with this note. So when we go to see a person, when you go to see your friend, you take something, right, as a gift. What gift are we going to give the Prophet and the Aimah in Medina? Think about that question, okay? So let's start one loud salawat. Inayat Bhai, you want to say something? They're all sitting down. Okay. All right. So for the online viewers, thank you for joining. We are now closing at the Masumin Center. Inayat Bhai has arranged chai and snacks for us. Inshallah, we'll share this in Medina and Makkah with you. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.